Good evening. We're glad that you're all here tonight for our fourth session of our Fort Collins Issues Forum. And we have so far looked at things like our migrant situation in Fort Collins, affordable childcare. Last week we heard from Homeless Alliance, and they did send me their end-of-year report after we all had our meeting, and anybody who would like that, I'd be more than happy to forward that to you. And tonight we have the Reverend David Williams, and he's here to talk to us about a brand new initiative. I think it was created like in May last year, or this past May, called Our Commitment to Self and Society. And he's here to tell us about that and what sort of work they're doing and how we might support them. So Reverend Williams is a senior pastor at Abyssinian Christian Church here in Fort Collins, and I'm going to turn it over to him to talk to you. If you have any questions at home, feel free to type those in the chat. And here we have the microphone, and we'll take questions as we go along too. Thank you.
Let me say good evening to everyone. It's good to see you and to be with you. Thank you for just taking these few moments just to kind of connect with each other and continue a discussion. My greatest respect for what you're doing. I think we are in that point and in that place where we do need to talk out loud. How do we really make our communities that much more secure and better for everyone, and that's really where we are. Before I go, just want to say to Pastor Nelson, good to see you, and Lynn, thank you for letting and inviting me to this time. Well, the initiative that Lynn alluded to, yes, we kind of started brainstorming early spring of last year, what is going on after we had such a turbulent 2020, not only with the pandemic, but there were other variables that caused us as a country and as a nation and as a people to really feel a stirring in our own spirit. And I think that was probably the impetus for what happened for me, that coming into 2021, we had enough blame to go around. The blaming had just gotten too deep, and but we were not finding real solutions. And people were saying, what do we need to do to better our communities, our cities, our hamlets, our towns? And it just seemed like we were in a stale place. And tell you the truth, it was so important to me that if we were not willing to really come across the aisles, which this makes it better, that we would never reach, I think, a conclusion that would really be beneficial for all of us. So our commitment to self and society is a opportunity for a local community to find ways to bring about a more healthier spiritual, mental, physical community if they take the necessary steps. And let me just start off by telling you what I think was one of our issues that we did not address. When I think about our commitment, and commitment is going to be the foundation of what we're talking about, is how do we commit as individuals, as institutions, as businesses? How do we commit, and then back up, what is it we need to commit to? And we found out, and just our time of just thrashing around, where is the racial divide, where is the economic divide, where is the social divide, we realized that every time there was a trauma or tragedy in our country, no matter where we landed, good people will come together. Good people will just come together. And for us here in Colorado or Fort Collins, we normally meet up at downtown at the Old Town Center. And we all come together and we light candles and we sing, and we even use terms like never again. We don't want this to happen. And it feels good in that moment. And I think it's okay for people to come together like that. But normally when that moment is over, we go home. And in a very short period of time, we forget where we were and what brought us there. And so we go back to normal. What we realize and what I realize is that just like your church, we call it the choir is always there. Remember, no matter when you hold church, the choir is going to sing. So you expect the choir to sing. But that means, where are those people that are missing? And we found out in our research, or looking around every time tragedy, both national or local or statewide, there were people that we expected to come together, but then there were people who we never saw. And the greatest amount of people we never saw were our larger institutions, our businesses, and our professional arenas. And so we were not pointing fingers, but we said they feel the push too. They feel the impact because they are a part of our community. And so what we began to really push into is that we says, how can communities really in every facet come together to make this a better community? And I'm going to ask Michael if he'll throw up my first slide, and this I'll try to walk through this real quick. If you're looking at this slide, we started out by saying that we love our city and we call it a choice city. For whatever reason, we use that term, Fort Collins, the choice city. And we began to say, what would it look like if it was a choice community for everyone, for all? Please don't take that as I'm trying to put words into people's mouths, trying to say, you've got to accept this, you've got to accept this. That's not what we're alluding to. We're saying we are individuals who believe that this community has room for those who desire to live in this community. And so we began to ask, what would it look like? What would make a city choice? And we came and told ourselves, if we would stop just going to rallies, but began to look at who's here, who's not here, those who are here, what is it going to take that everyone feels that this is the community that they choose to live in, want to live in, and hope to die from or within this community? So one of the conversations I often hear is in Fort Collins or Laramie County, I often hear people use the terms, we are so white. We are so white that there's a problem. It's not enough diversity here. And you try to leave it at that, but that's not good enough. You have to ask yourself, well, you know, if only the people who are here are white, why do other people choose not to be here? Or if they come, why did they not stay? I'm a long-termer now. You know, I'm 35 years in, so I guess I finally get my Fort Collins sticker or something, but you know, I didn't leave in the first 5 years. But there are people who have come and have found out that, you know, on the exterior it looks well. You know, you can buy the house, you can buy the car, you can live in certain places, but there are others who are saying, we wanted to be a part, but somehow there were variables that were not as pleasing to us for whatever reason. We said then, could we begin to have a real conversation about that? What would it take for people to believe that this community is the community that we've watched the news, we've watched the Fergusons, we've watched the Clevelands, we've watched the Texas, and we choose not to mimic what we are seeing on the news. So this is where our commitment to self and society comes in. We believe one of the first things that this community may benefit from is to really begin to look at itself and says, we will value every person who lives within the context of our community. Doesn't cost you anything. This commitment is not about money. What we're advocating isn't, you won't see me going door to door, what you give me. This is, can we change a mindset and intentionally begin to say, from our perspective, we want people who will come to this community to be valued. We will value. That's the first leg, valuing all people. Well, what does that look like? Well, in order to value all people, I put together a team of people and we began to say, Dave, where would you get the most impact? And we believe the impact can be felt extremely well if not just the people in your congregation, my congregation, and all the other church congregations are saying this, but what if our businesses, what if our institutions, what if our companies begin to say it is time that everyone that is within their walls or their sphere of influence as a business they too will adhere to, we want everyone to feel valued. So our challenge then, as we began to talk about our commitment, was how can we get businesses to relook at what they're doing, how they're doing, and are people having equitable opportunity for advancement, promotions, to live in this community at the highest level. Not just you're able to move here, but can our company stand beside us and says, not only do we value the CEO, but we also value the janitor. Not only do we value the janitor, we value everyone that we have taken the initiative to hire and become part of our business. And so will the businesses begin to take on the idea that we want to intentionally value our employees? Why? Because we say it, if the everyday person is valued, then when the everyday person is valued, they will increase the value of their businesses. When businesses are valued, we believe it will value the community. So it has to be a step-by-step process. And so we said the only way this can happen is that people, not only local people, but our leadership in our communities, our institutions, all of our corporations, as many as we can, would come to that conclusion that when we talk about diversity, we will celebrate diversity. When we talk about equality, we will celebrate that everyone is welcome in our facilities, our communities. And when that happens, we believe there's ripple effect to our community will begin to begin to reflect this type of attitude, and we believe that people will want to be in this community. Well, and I'm talking as fast as I can so I can make sure you all can have some questions here. We said there are three levels that we are trying to address. We're trying to look at stakeholders, we're trying to look at who people would be as champions, and we're trying to look at people who would be as leaders. When we talk about stakeholders, we're talking about, again, I call them the choir. These are people who come whenever there is a crisis, and they were saying we're there to help. If there is a tornado, there are certain people who are saying we're coming to aid, we're going to be there. We want to address not only those people, but people who do not ordinarily show up. And we want to invite them to be committed to the best that this community can offer. And we call those the stakeholders. These are the everyday people who go to work, who live in communities, who raise their children, who just are good neighbors. We're asking people to begin to say, instead of buying into we are a broken world or a broken country or a broken community, we are going to put our best foot forward to say, we're going to buy into, we're going to make this community the best community it can be. Well, then you need champions. I've had the opportunity to sit at Hewlett-Packard with their running manager and a couple of their leaders because they're doing a great program in diversity training and really trying to turn HP into a more inclusive employee base throughout the country. Well, they looked at me and they said, Dave, you know what you're trying to do is what we all should be trying to do. I said, yes. I said, because if we all just sit on the fence and continue to point and says, what team am I on? I'm not on this team, but I'm on this team. We're never going to achieve that cohesiveness that we really desire. What we wanted to is begin to walk into our companies and our corporations and to challenge them. Would you become champions with us? Would you become partners with us that you can reflect inside your businesses how to value every person who works with you from the floor up? And then we said, then we needed our leadership. So we spent the most of the late spring, early summer in talking to our mayors, talking to our police chiefs, getting them on board. We got them aboard with us. We went to the city council. We went to the Larimer commissioners. We began to talk to any and everybody saying, what projects and what ways can you help empower the people who serve under you that in retrospect, they will turn around and speak well about our community. So what are you doing? How does that look? How can you use your resources and your influences for the people you serve? And that's the self part. You have to have, how do you do self-recognition of what it is that makes your people feel valued? We said to them, when your people feel that there is a sense of value within their corporations and the businesses that they work for, they in turn will tell others, stay in our community, come work in our community, come work for our business, come work for the companies we work in, because we believe there's going to be this raising of positiveness within our community that will make it even that much better. Now, go to the next slide, Mike, would you please? And I just gave you these slides just so you could kind of just see where we're going to and heading, trying to bring this into people's mind. If you look right in the middle, we says Fort Collins as a choice community for all. And we said, in order to be a choice city, the community has got to move from finger pointing to arm locking. We've got to find a way that what can we take on as a community to be the community that we believe is the choice city. Well, one of the first things on the left side, you said, by being intentional. We've heard over and over how people, when during 2020, the George Floyd case really brought a lot of awareness into all of our hearts and to our lives, but it wasn't enough to change us as a nation. What has to happen is people have got to believe that we're going to need a greater partnership. We're going to need a greater awareness of who we are. How can we police ourselves? How can we somehow look at and hold ourselves accountable that what we say when a tragedy happens is actually lived out? Here is the best part of our commitment to self and society for me. One of the things we propose is in our relationships with our institutions, our businesses, and our corporations, that they will not only pledge to do or pledge to be a instrument of what shall I say, equality and equity and justice for all, but they will also begin to advertise or tell this community, what are we doing to make this happen within our institutions. When I was with HP had already started in that work of saying we're trying to expose to our members and our employees and our businesses, these are the paths that we're taking to make sure that you feel a part of this community, a part of this company, able for advancement. And we said that's exactly what we want. But what happens is most people in community won't know what HP is doing. So what we pledge to HP is, as you are creating a pathway for equity and justice within your company, we want to take on the opportunity to help promote inside community what you're doing. So we want to get the word out about who you are. That's the part about our commitment to self. Now we move into society. We want others to know that there are people in our community, there are organizations in our communities, there are churches in our community, there are mosques in our community who are doing some of the good work, but so many of us don't know it. And so then we go back to our silos and we complain with our own groups, and we're saying we want to override that and begin to highlight who we are. Now for those companies and businesses that have no policy, that have no ideal of how could they become an instrument of moving us into a better position as a community, we're saying, let us come in and share with you some ideas. You don't take our ideas, you just hear our ideas. You look at your organization, your business, and begin to reflect on, if we're not doing, what could we do to reflect a more equitable society? And so we said that's by being intentional. When we do that, we believe it lends itself to helping us move toward a choice community. On the other side, it says by initiating commitments. So we do want commitments from people. We believe when an incident happens or when people pledge, they mean it from their hearts, but they often forget. I just returned from Haiti. I was in Haiti for 8 days, and a couple of weeks ago, Haiti was very much front page because of its earthquake. Haiti was very much front page because of its storms that had come through. But by the time I get to Haiti, it's not front page news anymore. People are just saying, we go back to business as usual. What our commitment to society says, we don't let you go back to business as usual. Every interval of time, what we're saying right now, we will host our first initial I call it a banquet because we don't have a word for it yet, but a gathering for this community to come together to hear from some of our major corporations, some of our institutions, some of our local businesses, some of our B-class businesses, to tell at this setting what they are doing or what they plan to do to afford a better environment for their workforce. And we want to highlight that at that meeting. But we want to give you 12 months because we want to bring you back in 12 months and ask you, how close are you to meeting these goals? How close are you to actually doing what you said? Because it's easy when your hearts are breaking to just tell people, no more, no more. Being in this community, I hear it over and over. No more this, no more that, no more this, no more that. But in 3 months, we don't even use the term no more at all. So what our commitment to society is saying, we're holding you to the fire to do exactly what you say you're doing. And just like you guys are doing these next few weeks, you know, what a marvelous way. That would be part of what we would say is part of the commitment. It's commitment. How will you get people updated? How will you tell people, how can we better ourselves? How can we be a better community? And it won't become a better community just because you said we're going to be one. It's going to be because you said we put our foot to the fire. And we are going to do X, Y, and Z, and in that, we're going to come back and report to our community, to all of our neighbors and to our friends. We said we were going to, and we get to say, did you do this? And then we've had these wonderful stickers, these wonderful certificates made that people get to say, we did it, here's your certificate, here's your decal to say we are part of our commitment to self and society. And finally, we said, we believe this will bring about a transparency and accountability. What I hear around America is that there is no basic accountability for what we're saying we are doing. We can say it on national, but we need some way to be reminded, we said this is who we are. So we're challenging Fort Collins. Our mayor was very excited. She says, hey, this is where we are. Please, Dave, will you allow us to put this part into our agenda? So we're trying to work with the mayor. Our police department says, hey, this is what we're trying to do. When we're trying to relook at our community, how do we have a police force that is equal to all people that it serves? We love that, but we're saying, but sir or chief, the only way we will know that that is so is that we are able to hear at regular intervals how you're maintaining a police force of integrity. We're not angry, this is not a fight, this is not a call out. We just believe if we can move this community into a commitment to first to yourselves. You know, First Presbyterian could be part of our people of leadership and our champions. But what has happened, you've got to look at what it is that you can do to increase your own self-awareness and support of the people of value, and then how that can go back out into community. So we're asking churches, we're asking religious places of faith to consider as well. We've had people say, hey, we're exchanging a book club. Wonderful. We're trying to understand, just like you're doing, we're trying to understand where are the potholes in our community. I think that's admirable. What we're asking people is, this isn't about money, it's about, can we raise the level of who we are as a people? And I'll kind of close with this and get ready for your questions. We believe we have to engage the community, we want to establish partnerships, and we want to effect equity. And then we have to know where it is. We have to be aware. And since it's a part of our community, we are asking you to commit to being in partnership with us. And we believe right now we have some good traction. We believe we're beginning to feel that we're on the right road, but it's really about our commitment to our community. And it just so happens, as we call our community, the community of the Choice City. Michael, would you skip slide number 3? I want to go straight to 4, and I'll be done. You've all seen this one. We believe businesses, companies, institutions, you can help bring about a change without alienating people within your businesses. You've seen, many of you seen this picture of what does it look to be equal? What does it look to have equity? And then what does it look to have justice? You know, equality is the assumption that everyone benefits from the same supports. I wish that were so, but there are some people who did not start at the same starting place. And so we're asking businesses to don't run past that. We're asking schools, don't run past that. When I was on my way here, something came to my mind. I said, you know, even on our churches, one of the things we look at is for us who are growing older, our hearing changes. You know, just because we once used to be 25 and 30 and 40 and 50 and 60, but now we are a little older than that. But what you do often, there are churches, there are religious facilities that you either bring in a person who may sign language. You may bring a person in who may say, hey, let's put headsets on. It's saying we want to make sure everybody is connected without saying, if you're not 20, you can't hear. We don't care about that. You do care. So we're saying that's what moves us into equity. Equity says that everyone gets the support that they need. And that's what we're asking businesses and to make this a choice city and to make sure everyone has the tools to do a great job for you. In return, we believe that they're going to become happy and good citizens and employees. And finally, we says, if we from the very beginning began to look at what will it take so we don't even have to fight with how to start at we were not equal or we were not equitable. How about we just look at it, we're just going to be the city that does the best that it can to make sure everyone has all the resources, all the tools that are possible for us to be in a business, because we want people to know that you are a part of this community. We believe that will usher in justice. And so this is why our commitment to self, it is self-reflection. When self-reflection is in place, that we believe in return, it will produce a better society. And we're asking people to think about this, our businesses to think about how can you better serve, how can you better reflect your community, how can you better address the issues that are affecting your community, that are affecting your business. We believe in return that we have a higher way of raising the level of, I think, of respect and decency and love within a community, but it's got to be intentional. So we address this as our commitment to self and society. We're working this pretty hard. That's enough talking, you know. If I talk too much, I'll be called out 3 points. Yeah, so I'm open for questions. And if I talk fast, don't.
Start by saying, I presume that it's also would be fair for a business to say, we said we were going to do, but
yes,
we discovered en route that we need to do X, or that this, and so we're adjusting plans.
Mm-hmm.
And that would also be an acceptable report.
Yeah. We believe the reporting, Lynn, is high on our list, that people have to tell us, what are you doing? And if you're not doing, what can we help you begin to do?
Right.
There's a hand here. There's a hand beside you.
Hi, I'm an educator, and I've just moved here recently. And I've observed a lot of what you're talking about all across the country. I've taught and lived all across the country. So I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate a little bit more about how you see this working in our schools.
Yeah. I know we have a new superintendent this year has come into the Poudre School District, and we have put on our schedule, trying to get on his schedule. We have met him. But what we're looking for inside the schools is the same thing. When you live in a community that has a diverse of students, then we are asking, what are you doing to hire and retain teachers, administrators that don't just look like you, but what will you do to attract a more diverse workforce? because you have that in your population of your students, then we're saying, tell us what your goals are to bring them in. Then that's first. But second, we have to move to that other question. How will you retain them? That's the second question. Because sometimes in our school system, we will go, we've been bringing them in, but they've been going out of the back door. We've been bringing a diverse in, but they're going out the back. We're asking them, what's your policy to stop that front door out the back door? That's second. Then we also want to know what's your goals for upward mobility. And I'm talking at the highest levels of education. Not just can I be a teacher, but where can I move into administration? Where can I become a principal? Where can I become, what track do I need to be as a superintendent? We're saying we want you to be able to tell your community that, and so we want to hear what your policies are. So that's what we're looking for inside the school district.
Strikes me that one of the more important things that you're doing is this connective work. The range of people you're talking to, the opportunities to bring them together under the banner of this kind of work that you're talking about, and to get people to seriously reflect on where they're at, what's working, what's not working,
yes, sir,
et cetera. So I know you had the one event in August, and I just curious if you could say a little bit about how that went and maybe what you learned from that about how you might do future gatherings.
Sure, I can. Thank you. And I just want to say right off the bat, you're right. We believe we need some of everybody under the umbrella. And so we are not trying to walk on anybody's toes. We're not trying to stop any other organization from what they're doing. But we're saying in order to have a better community, it's going to take people from the community, all parts of the community. So that's important to us. The question, when we had our first, almost called it a come to Jesus meeting, but that's not it. When we had our picnic, our time in the park, it was really well attended, as well as the feedback we got was over the top. People really believed that this was an initiative that they could get into. But what we want people to know, this isn't a feel-good initiative. It isn't feel-good, and again, you go home and we do nothing. It is, how do we get into that engagement with others? We have to get through this whole community as much as we can, and we are now planning before year end is for our year end coming back together. But we want to make sure it's not a waste of time, but we have tried to bring in some of our anchor partners, which one or two is HP and two other companies that we won't name until we've had their audience, but we're trying hard for them. But we are planning to bring our initial groups together to say, hey, this is where we are. And at the first of the year, we're hoping to get our first commitment discussion that's going to go out global around our community of, these are the companies that we have on track with us. These are the businesses that we have on track with us. These are the institutions that we have on track with us. They're going to run for a year, and we're going to come back in a year and say, hey, what were you doing? Give us your report. And we want to be able to highlight those who kept up or even surpassed their goals, and those who may say, hey, we kind of went lax along the way, or we were turned off. We want to be able to ask them then, what support can we help you with? What can we bring? We want to just make ourselves available. So it's really a launching of this will happen the first of the year. But it's because we had such a well turnout and a well support from the picnic that people are waiting on our next steps. So our newsletter is going out, and I'll tell you how to get onto our newsletter list. Our newsletter goes out. I've been gone, and so I got to do my reporting, but our newsletter goes out about every other week. We send out a newsletter updating who we've talked to, responses that we've had, and where people are. So I would love for you to get onto our newsletter list, and you also can go to our webpage. So all that's happening. But thank you.
I'm not totally clear on how you are organized. You call yourself a committee to yourself and society. But what is the organizational structure of this, and how does that, are you membership-based? Do you have a board of directors?
We
Do you
have a board.
governing board? Are you?
We call it a leadership board. We have a leadership board. There are 4 of us who actually lead the leadership board, and I think you may know them. It's myself, Rabbi Hillel is on our board, Nina Rubin is on our board, and Mark Bell is on our board. So these are, we call it more of a leadership. These are our steering. But we also have voices in community. So that will go as sponsors. Those will be like the chief of police. Jeff Swoboda is there. We reflect with Jeff, with the mayor. She's on our community advisory. So we reflect back to the chief of police, the mayor. There's 2 others. Oh, we have 2 Laramie County commissioners. These are people that we reflect to, and we keep asking, what can we do? How do we understand? I'm not trying to be a 501(c) just yet. That's not our goal. Our goal is to bring a concept into this community. And we are trying to keep it as succinct as possible with the fiduciary, with oh my God, we have a deep relationship with the faith community. I'm trying to think, the ecumenical faith community. Somebody help me, Davis. Interfaith Council is our reporting organization now. And so we are a grassroots like anyone else. We're trying very hard to use local voices and persons, but it is really about bringing together a commitment from our local people and companies and businesses and institutions to take on this. And this is our first year out.
Or individuals who want to join you in your work, how do they do that? I think that's part of maybe what Karen was trying to ask.
Go to our webpage. Our webpage is Our Commitment, all one word, ourcommitment.net. And you will go to, there's a tab, there's how can you get involved? Okay. Go to that tab. All you got to do is register yourself, then you will be into our mailing list. You get to hear everything that not hear everything that we're doing, but you are plugged into who we are and what we're doing. But that's ourcommitment.net.
And I guess the second question is, as you have been talking to all these companies and business organizations and government organizations, are there common themes that keep coming up?
Very much.
And what might those be that,
You know what I hear over and over, Lynn, is this is exactly where we are at. If I haven't heard that line 10 times, here's all of me. You keep hearing people saying we're at that place right now. I think people are wondering what's next. And I think people are really genuinely concerned in how do we move from this awareness of some of our issues, but we don't know what next steps are. So HP is a very prime example. They now have a COO of diversity. And their COO is saying this is what they're trying to implement within the organization worldwide. Is how are we more diverse set up? How are we more aware for mobility within our company? How are people not only coming in at one level and having to stay there the next 20 years, but how do they also get opportunity to move through the company but stay in the company? So they are when I met with them and 3 or 4 of their leadership team, their words to us right off the bat was, we need to be in partner with you. Because they believe when they're in partnership with community, it makes their businesses better. And so I don't want to say it was an easy sell, but it was an easier presentation because what we were asking, they're already trying to do. And other businesses that we have come across are saying the same thing. We know we have problems in our institutions, but we want to move from what is problems to how do we solve some of our problems. And so we're not going out telling people you're bad people. We're trying to tell people how do we raise the quality and the lifestyle of the everyday person who lives here in this local community. And that's what some of our businesses are telling us. That seems to be the common theme. You're right, we're right there with you. Can I say this, and just because I'm me? You know, it's the same thing when I go into a church. You know, churches, we do church very well. We do church good. We know how to do church. But after we do church, we have trouble coming across the aisle. We have trouble with race. We have trouble with how do we view people sexually. We have trouble with, you know, what we believe is who's a visitor, who's not, who where. We have those issues, but we don't always know what to do. And so we're saying we're here not to make you go one way or another, but help you, give you opportunity to think what's best for your local group. And whatever that is, which we asking you to make a commitment that all of your people feel a sense of this is where we want to be. Because if they feel that this is where they want to be, we believe the extended community will benefit from that. Yeah.
Michael, can you put the previous slide up back again? I want to frame my question opposite that.
Okay.
Is it, if you look at this and say, where we exist now may even be to the left of equality. Where we exist right now may be to the left of equality. And so that a goal an organization could aspire to is getting to equality. But as long as they understand that's not the end, they don't get bait and switched. But once you get to that point, you have some understanding of what it will take then to establish equity. And when you understand equity, you now have a chance to look at what are the systemic issues that are causing it. By your nod, I presume that might be the right way to look at this.
Yes, sir. You're dead on. Because we believe these have been yet hang-ups in our society for so long. We use those words, but sometimes even when we're talking about equality doesn't just transfer across. You know, I could give you all $5, but some of you may need $10 to pay your rent. But I used equality to give you all $5. Nobody got shortchanged. But I'm going, you know, Pastor Nelson may need a little bit more. He got 6 kids, and we want to help him to be able to get his kids through. And then we eventually want to make sure that in our companies and our institutions, that we at some time in our future, hopefully either for ourselves or our children or our grandchildren, that we would rather be a community of justice from the get-go, from the start, versus having to go back and repair. We're just doing some old work that we might have to deal with because we believe when there's equity in the Fort Collins community, we also are moving into justice within this community at whatever level. Yes, sir. Sorry, I wasn't on the mic.
You know, people like you and reading books and things. Can you give some specific examples of what you've been doing in your church?
Oh, yes. Well, we've been doing some of the same stuff some of the same things you do. We read books too. I mean, please.
But we need to get beyond that.
But see, I will tell people, don't rush it. And see, the problem of trying to work in society is we're so impatient. And so we want to say this issue, whatever we're dealing with, can we be over this by next month? Well, you don't get, it took us 100 years to get here. It's probably going to take us some years to move out of this. But what we want to do is to really inform and educate, because people are intelligent enough to make big people choices. We have been reading books, we've watched all the films, but we've done little things that we can put these into action. One of them that we have is called a justice cohort. And so we challenge a justice cohort of our people to go and hook up with someone in city, someone in county, someone in our Poudre School District, and see where people are falling through the gaps, what was falling through the gaps. And just to do a report on it. And we got people to come back and says, wow, we got people who are sleeping in cars here in Fort Collins. You wouldn't think people here in Fort Collins sleep in cars, but we have people who sleep in cars here. So our people were talking to the city, and they found out that we may have an issue where some people can't afford the housing. And so if you got a law that says it's illegal to sleep in your car, well, then we found out then there's a deeper rooted issue than this person just sleeping on cars. But that had to be found by our local people, our local church people, that there are some things here that everybody is not just well. So we use a justice cohort to make people find what is happening in your local community. And I'll say this because everybody thinks the only problem is race. Race is not the only issue when we talk about social ills. It is a issue, but it's not the issue. And so we challenge people who would say, well, hey, Dave, we don't have many minorities here. We don't have a lot of black people. I'm going, that doesn't mean you don't have social issues. And so we have to educate that, because people will say, well, if I go to Southside Chicago, boy, we'll get some issues. Or Dave, I'm sorry, Pastor, I didn't mean to talk about the city, nothing. But if we go to Haiti, and I'm going, you don't have to go to Haiti to find out that there are issues, income issues. There is housing issues here. There's homelessness here. Of course, we live in a state that we have drugs as an issue. I mean, but our gambit, we have human trafficking here. So our social cohort found these issues, and it began to enlighten our people. But before our people can really begin to engage in it, they really have to learn and be enlightened. So I think what you're doing right now is 100. I would be able to give you a sticker now to say you are doing what we need to do, is to educate. People want answers, but they don't want to take the time to educate. So this is what some of the things we're finding. I hope that answers you.
Another question.
Yes, ma'am.
How involved are you with the Native American community?
Well, Native American, last summer we did a fund drive for the Native American. We gave a substantial amount of finance to the Native American community because we believe that the pandemic hit them extremely hard. And in our own denomination, we have a huge concern. I don't know, we just come through the doctrine of discovery. Well, that's a whole nother thing, but we believe that the Native Americans, like a ton of people of color, have really been hit hard by the pandemic. And not only the pandemic, but there are some things that socially should not be. And so we try to be in constant contact with our Native brothers and sisters. So we have taken action to show them that there's a sense of solidarity. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So there's been some interesting research done on what makes cities or regions economically strong. And one of the interesting factors that's come out of that research is that communities that are more inclusive, more equitable, less of a gap between the rich and the poor, less people living in cars, people of all kinds being well educated so that the workforce is highly educated, tend to be the places that are having the strongest economic. So there's a strong business case for what you're talking about here. And as you're talking with the business community, I hope that's part of the conversation. And I just think that that is a good place to start, but not necessarily for all the reasons you indicated. I mean, in some ways, I think businesses are ahead of churches in doing the
that,
work
I did.
of inclusion.
That's
well.
on you.
So we need to learn some things from them, probably. But in this larger sense of looking at the health of the whole, I think we've all got a long way to go, and the places that have figured that out are thriving.
All I can say is yes, amen. Businesses have found out that when there is a diversity or exchange of ideas through a diverse population or leadership, they come up with the better ideas for success and upward mobility throughout that business. That's just on the record books. Wall Street Journal did something on that, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months ago, that they found out any business or leadership model that just says we want all one and the same, you come up lacking or way behind the model of success. And we're believing then that should hold out also in community, that you want a community that has a diverse ideas, diverse sense of population, but that's pouring together for the sake of the good. And so that includes the labor force, that includes the religious force, that includes the common person in the neighborhood. When we bring all those resources together, we have the power of a really a turnaround of a community. But that has to be bought in, and what we're asking people then is to buy into this commitment. That's what it's going to take to help change this. And so that's where we're headed. That's what we're running with. But you're exactly right. I think the church knows this. I think we preach it and we teach it. We're just a little slow at implementing it. And so I want us to be a little bit more quicker in saying, you know, we have the greatest teacher out there. But he had a whole, now I'm going off on the other tangent, but he had a really ragtag group of guys to change the world. So we're saying, can we partner at one time? Can we engage with each other at whatever level you are for the sake of our community? And can I say this at the very last, if there are no more questions? We cannot stand to be a community or a country that is waiting on the other side to fail. And that's what it feels like. It feels like we are waiting on a part of our country. If they fail, then we will step in. I think that is totally ridiculous. And so we in this local community should be the type of people that says, we are not going to accept failure as an outcome. We are going to use every resource and every piece of energy that we can to make sure every kid gets to school, every kid graduates, every person who goes off to college can get through there, that we can work. You can work at King Soopers today. You can start as a clerk, but King Soopers got a track that you could be a store manager or whatever to the highest level. But we've got to be committed to that. And that's why we have said we believe when we start at that bottom layer, you remember my first flyer, when we started valuing people, people will help us value businesses, businesses will help us value our community. Yeah. I'm done.
Thank you, friend. It's great to have David here. David is a pillar of our community, and as he said, has been here a long time, pastor of Abyssinian Church here in town, and will be transitioning out of that role in a few months, a very well-deserved transition into the next season of his life. And you will certainly be missed among colleagues, but we know you're not going anywhere, and we will continue to treasure those friendships. Next Wednesday night, which will be the 13th, am I adding the days right? Tonight is what again? Next Wednesday night on the 13th, Dr. Blanche Hughes, Vice President of Diversity at Colorado State University, will be here to share a little bit about likely some of the same perspectives, particularly through the lens of the university and our partnership as a church that has been around just about the same number of years, 150 plus or minus in this community as the university. We have a long-standing partnership there and a lot to learn from and to share with and benefit from each other in that partnership. So look forward to having her here next week. But let me close up tonight with a word of prayer. Good and gracious God, we are so grateful for the opportunity to gather and continue this important, this crucial dialogue together as we reflect on the ways that each of us individually and corporately as a community raise our awareness about the important issues, the realities, the challenges that are faced by all people, and then nurture relationships so that we can better hear and see and know one another and the realities of our lives, and then make commitments, real commitments to real change, to real positive ways of including and advocating for and empowering and equipping all of our citizens in this community. We know as people of faith that that is at the heart of our faith. but it is not just for our particular faith. We know that it's just for the common good and the greater good. And it is what we are called to do and to be. So may your Spirit continue to grant us wisdom and the strength to do hard work for sure, but your kingdom work as well. We pray blessings for Pastor Williams and his family as they make this transition in their lives. We give you thanks for so many years of faithful and vibrant service as a witness and colleague in this community, and bless them in this time in their lives too. We ask all this and let all God's people say, amen. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.